Hello, I'm Dave Anderson. Uh, I'm in the real estate business, and the reason for me visiting with you today is should you start selling real estate? Should you consider selling real estate? That's a big question, and that's at this time in the spring of 2013. Is it time for you to consider beginning a career in real estate in the spring of 2013? I'm sure you probably heard over the last few years that real estate wasn't that good, and maybe it's not the thing to do. Well, that was true in 2008, 2009. Real estate was pretty slow. It got a little difficult to make a living in real estate in those years of 2008 and 2009 because of the mortgage meltdown that occurred from lenders making loans to people that shouldn't have got loans in the first place back in the early 2000s. And that did have an impact on the real estate business. I would be lying to you if I said anything else. But I'm going to tell you right now, the real estate business is red hot. It's red hot right now. It's really going strong. People are taking listings that are in the business, and they're seeing those listings get sold within a week to 2 weeks, and in many cases they're taking multiple offers. And I think part of the reason for that is the pent-up demand that happened when it was more difficult to get a loan, and because the lending companies were really trying to watch who they lent money to, and so they had higher standards. And people were hearing that people were losing their homes. And with all of those things that were happening, people said, oh, I would never consider real estate at this moment because it's too risky and I need to have a steady income. So I can understand why you would be a little apprehensive about the real estate business. But let me give you a little history. I've been in real estate since 1968. I started in real estate in April of 1968, which makes it 45 years that I've been in the business. I've owned an office for 38 years. I started my business on January 2nd, 1975. And I've owned a real estate business in that 38 years that I've had it. I worked as a sales manager in another company before I bought this company from somebody that was getting out of the business. And I started this company, as me being the owner, on January 2nd, 1975. So I've gone through two of the major slowdowns in the industry. In 2008, 2009, it was difficult. But that wasn't as difficult as 1980 and 81. And the reason being, in 2008 and 2009, interest rates were still hovering around 4%. When it was really difficult to sell real estate was when interest rates were at 16 and 17% in 1980 and 81. They got up to 17% in the fall of 81. The Sioux Falls Board of Realtors went from 675 licensed agents selling real estate in May of 1979 to 175 agents still actively engaged in the real estate business on December 1st, 1981. So there was never a worse time than it was from 80 and 81. Now, real estate prior to that, where it was bad, was in the 30s, and they had the Great Depression. Now, I'm 71 years old. So the Great Depression happened before I was even born. And so for most of the people that are watching this video, you weren't born yet. It may have been your parents, or it could have been your grandparents, or even your great-grandparents that went through the Great Depression. And it was bad. And real estate wasn't a business that people would look at as something that would sustain their income. Now, real estate was terrible up until the Great Second World War. From studying the history of real estate, it really changed after the war because all of the veterans that went over and fought the Germans and the Japanese came home with a GI Bill. And the government said, we're going to make you a loan. We're going to make sure you can get a loan to buy a home, or we'll give you a loan to go to college as an appreciation for going over and defending our freedom. And so from 1947 through 1957, there was a building boom because these veterans came home and the government said you could borrow money and with no down payment, we'll let you get a home. And so they used it to buy a house. And the houses were built. My father was a house builder back in those days. He was very busy. And if you were in real estate, you had to be really, if you really wanted to be where it was really busy, you wanted to associate with a builder. And so real estate went very good. And in the 60s, it continued to get better and better. In the 70s, I would say were probably just as good, if not better, than 2000 through 2006 in real estate. The 70s were so good that people that owned a home would move many times because they wanted to ride that inflation that was going on. And they would buy a second house or a duplex or something as an investment. And the lending standards were kept down, so people invested in real estate in a big way back in those days. Now, so if we take from 1947 through 2007, that's a 60-year span. In that 60-year span, 4 years were difficult to make a living in real estate. 80 and 81, 2008, 2009. And so that's actually it's 62 years. So 4 years out of 62 years where it was difficult to make a living in real estate. Otherwise, for 58 years, people had a good chance of earning a good living in real estate. In fact, it was better than most professions other than your top professions like attorneys and doctors, some nurses, some professional athletes, and some business owners. But other than that, real estate was, if you were an aggressive type individual with a lot of ambition, you could come into real estate and become wealthy. You could use real estate as your vehicle to acquire wealth, and even use it as a vehicle to get enough resources to buy another type of business, like a restaurant. I had a guy that worked for me back in the 70s that came into real estate and was one of my top agents for 3 years. And why? Well, he had worked in a dental lab, and he knew that if he needed the money to put together to put a down payment down on a dental lab. And he claimed that once he was able to do that, it would be very, very lucrative. And he did put the money together, and he bought a dental lab in Denver, Colorado. And he's still doing that and has that business in Colorado. But it was a vehicle that he used to get that extra money so he could do it. Now, if he'd worked in that dental lab as an associate there, he probably never would have had a chance to have enough money scratched together to be able to make the down payment to get his own. So real estate worked for him. Now if you work in a convenience store, I don't mean to be demeaning people that work in convenience stores, or you work in a fast food place, or you work in a restaurant where you're a server or a host or something of that nature, or you work in a retail business like at Yonkers or Macy's or any of those places, chances are your income is probably in and around $10 an hour, unless you are a manager, and then you probably make more money. But if you're not in management and you work in retail or fast food or convenience stores or something like that, chances are you're working very hard, showing up every day, and you're working for about $10 an hour. Now, you could be fortunate and found a job where they pay you $15 an hour, $20 an hour, or maybe even more than that. And if that's the case and you're happy with where you're at, then this is not the video you shouldn't be looking at my proposal.